Japan was once on its way to becoming the world's largest economy. The country became Asia's first advanced economy in an intensive reconstruction drive after the devastation of the Second World War, and has risen to become the world's second-largest economy, thanks to its legendary work ethic and technological advances. This relatively small group of islands had moved economically closer to the much larger and more populous United States. During Japan's miracle growth period, economic growth averaged 10% per annum throughout the 1960s and remained above 5% until the 1980s. In 1989, the country's gross domestic product reached $3 trillion, making it the world's second-largest economy behind the United States. Even today, movies, video games, and cyberpunk genre content focus heavily on Japanese companies. This is because for a long time, people believed that in the future, high-tech Japanese companies would rule the world. But this prediction did not materialize, and instead, a handful of Californian tech companies rose to prominence in the world economy. The expected future never came. Japan's economy has been in recession for almost 4 decades. Far from being the world's largest economy, it has recently lost its place on the podium to another post-war miracle. In 2010, China overtook Japan to become the world's second-largest economy in terms of gross domestic product. Japan's rise and fall has shaped the careers of countless economists trying to figure out what exactly went wrong. But after all this time, it may be more important to question whether it is really a problem at all. The Japanese still enjoy a very high quality of life. Housing is affordable. They have one of the highest life expectancies in the world. And despite their reputation for overwork, they currently work less than many countries in the West. According to 2023 data, Japan ranks second highest in the world with an average life expectancy of 84.3 years. So how is it that, despite Japan's economic downturn, its people still enjoy a high quality of life? How is it that they still manage to live happily and long lives? And most importantly, can a country remain in its current stagnant state forever without serious side effects? In 1985, the United States, France, West Germany, the United Kingdom, and Japan met in a luxurious 5,400 square meter hotel in New York to conclude a joint agreement called the Plaza Accord, which is aptly named. While these agreements may seem friendly on the surface, as world leaders sat down for the ritual photo op, the reality was that the US was increasingly worried about growth with these competing nations, especially Japan. And in retrospect, with good reason. Fearing the manufacturing power coming from the East, the US signed an agreement between these 5 countries that would devalue its currency and make Japanese exports less competitive. This was a great deal for the US. American consumers would no longer buy Japanese products, which had become more expensive. As a result of the Plaza Accord, the Japanese yen appreciated by about 50% against the US dollar between 1985 and 1987. While $1 was 238 yen in 1985, this rate dropped to 123 yen at the end of 1980. So why did export-dependent Japan succumb to this unusual request? The short answer is, because they are not stupid. Japan knew that the deal would hurt their export-oriented economy. But they also understood that a trade war with the US would cause even greater damage. After all, the US was providing food for Japan's growing population, while offering resources to increase production. Japan used these needs to produce affordable consumer technology products. To put it bluntly, Japan had only 2 options: potential starvation and recession, or a manageable exchange rate shift. Paradoxically, the same factors that made Japan successful also explain its current stagnation. Apart from the boom that preceded the Asian financial crisis, Japanese society had a long history of risk aversion, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Many countries do the opposite and pay the price. But what makes them uniquely Japanese is the reason why they chose not to take risks in the first place. To put it mildly, the country has a reputation for excellence, to the extent that it has become a widely accepted stereotype. In most of its applications, be it food or the countless katana sword-making videos on YouTube, a significant proportion of the country's people spend years specializing in niche areas to provide the best possible product or service, And the business world is no different. This meant that when the market crashed, people all over the country were disillusioned. This shakeup reinforced fears of going off the beaten track to become entrepreneurs. The vast majority chose the safe path as a salaryman, a salaried employee, which is considered more stable and respected. Sony was one of the largest Japanese technology companies during this period and had a large share of international markets. However, Japan's rising yen posed a major challenge, especially for large export-oriented companies such as Sony. Sony struggled to keep product prices competitive during this period, as the strong yen made Japanese products more expensive in foreign markets. These economic difficulties pushed Sony to become an even bigger company, and also affected the company's business model. In the late 1980s, Sony began to invest more in the domestic market, while at the same time increasing the number of salaried employees to provide more labor. During this period, it reinforced a cultural tendency to see a job, especially one with a secure and stable salary, as more attractive than entrepreneurship. The workforce saw working for large technology firms as a more prestigious and secure option. For those who wanted to start their own business, the bureaucratic hurdles were so high that few dared to try. According to data from the World Economic Forum, Japan's entrepreneurship rate in 2023 was only 5.4%, one of the lowest among developed economies. This rate is 15.6% in the US and 11.2% in China. This has led to Japan, once synonymous with technical innovation, falling behind places like Silicon Valley, Seoul, and Shenzhen. In the early 2000s, the fact that an electronic device was Japanese meant that it was state-of-the-art. Today, they cannot even market competitive smartphones. According to 2023 figures, Japan's R&D expenditure accounts for about 3.4% of its gross domestic product. While this may seem high, it is well below South Korea's 4.8%. More importantly, the bulk of Japan's R&D spending is on improving existing technologies, not on breakthrough new technologies. The lack of innovation is due to people unwilling to take innovation risks. The World Bank ranks Japan only 29th in terms of ease of starting a business. There are additional barriers for foreigners, notably the language barrier. Although English is the language of business, only 8% of the population in Japan is fluent in English. Japan's demographics also help explain its economic stagnation. In 2023, the country's population fell to 125 million, a decline of nearly 3 million since 2010. Moreover, 29% of the population is aged 65 and over, the highest proportion of elderly people in the world. Japan is culturally resistant to change, and historically significant change has only occurred in the face of major societal threats. Combined with low birth rates and long life expectancy, this is not an ideal environment for a technology revolution anytime soon. For what was once one of the richest countries in the world, this may seem pessimistic, but contrary to what economists say, a stagnant economy is not necessarily a bad economy. Economists have suggested that such a slowdown for an advanced economy could result in high unemployment, low wage growth, and fiscal strain. Yet, Japan is the perfect counterexample. Its economy has not seen growth for over 3 decades, and contrary to those pessimistic forecasts, it has not collapsed. According to 2023 data, Japan's unemployment rate is only around 2.5%, one of the lowest among developed economies. In the US, it is 3.7%, and the EU average is around 6%. Japan has very low levels of inflation, partly because of its cultural resistance to change. In the past, businesses have had to apologize for raising their prices. Prices remain stable, allowing even stagnant wages to maintain purchasing power. Between 1999 and 2021, Japan's average annual inflation rate was almost zero, even experiencing deflation in some years. In 2023, the inflation rate rose to 3.2%, but this is still below most developed economies. Job security in today's Japan is truly impressive. The vast majority of working-age people have regular jobs, well above the world average. The Japanese people enjoy a very good standard of living thanks to the country's strong institutions. They are known for their low crime rates, both at home and around the world. The Japanese attach great importance to education and reap the rewards. Japanese students always rank high in math, science, and reading in international exams. This shows that the country's investment in education is paying off. Everyone knows Japan for its culture of overwork, but that's a thing of the past. At the moment, Japanese workers are working even less than Americans. Interestingly, Japan seems to have solved the housing problem that plagues countries like ours. While in many parts of the world, young people are giving up on the dream of owning a house, in Japan, it is quite different. The lack of growth prospects has led to houses being seen as consumption goods, like a car, rather than as an investment. Even in a populous city like Tokyo, house prices have barely increased for years. Japan has a good system for distributing the money of the rich throughout society. Inheritance tax. This ensures social mobility even in a stagnant economy, so that wealth is not concentrated in the hands of a few. The richest Japanese own a smaller share of the national wealth than the richest in other developed countries. But not everything is rosy, of course. Traditional values deeply embedded in society block innovation and development in the business world. Instead of firing their employees, Japanese companies are trying to retain them in some way. On the one hand, this ensures job security, but on the other hand, it reduces the productivity of the Japanese workforce in a world where technology is advancing at breakneck speed. In an age of digitalization and automation, Japan still insists on sticking to the old ways. The lack of innovation is slowing economic growth and setting the stage for a creative collapse. Japan's corporate structures are causing a long-standing stagnation. Employees have to wait for their superiors to retire to climb the career ladder. Rigid hierarchical structures make it almost impossible for new ideas and initiatives to emerge. This makes it difficult for young people to enter business life, and change is only possible when an outsider comes in. The average age of Japanese companies is quite high, leading to a lack of dynamism and innovation. People are drifting towards an uncertain future. Public debt is rising relentlessly. Japan was once able to ease this burden by borrowing from its own citizens. But now, the situation is much more complicated. Rising debt is discouraging investment in new businesses and dampening people's hopes for the future. The economic downturn is not just a domestic problem, it is also a sign of Japan's declining influence on the world stage. Japan, once a major player in the world economy, has largely lost this position. The world is changing rapidly, and Japan is struggling to keep up. If this trend continues, the Japanese will not benefit enough from the globalized world and will be alienated from their own society by the influence of foreign cultures and products. Japan's experience is not just the story of one country, but a sign of the future of all developed societies. Japan, with its aging population and economic stagnation, is a harbinger of the challenges many countries will face in the near future. Major economies like Germany, South Korea, Italy, and even China will face similar problems. This is not a disaster, but a sign that it is time to rethink our understanding of economic growth. Japan is showing how misleading it can be to measure everything by growth figures alone, leaving its past economic successes behind. Perhaps the example of Japan reminds us of the importance of not only economic growth, but also quality of life, reducing inequalities, and a sustainable model. Japan's situation makes us think, should we pursue continued growth and progress, or should we accept stagnation and reap the benefits it brings? Japan offers us a different path, but we do not yet know if it is sustainable in the long run. This choice could be an important turning point that will affect not only Japan's future, but all of ours.